The Velkin were dying, not from war or plague, but from fear itself. Their species had evolved on a death world where every shadow held teeth. Every silence preceded an ambush. Natural selection had carved cowardice into their very DNA. Those who hesitated survived. Those who were brave became meals. But now, scattered across the Galactic Union, their instincts had become a prison. Their cubs trembled at loud noises, cowered from strangers, and refused to leave designated safe zones. The elder Velkin had tried everything: sedatives, therapy pods, genetic modification. Nothing worked. Fear was their inheritance, coded deeper than bone. Then the human came. Mira Thorne hadn't meant to become a legend. She'd signed up for a cultural exchange program, expecting to teach basic mathematics to alien children. Instead, she'd been assigned to Station Kilos 9, where a dozen Velkin cubs had been quarantined after their caretakers deemed them behaviorally unsalvageable. The first time she entered the nursery, 12 pairs of luminous eyes stared at her from beneath furniture, inside storage crates, behind ventilation grates. The cubs were small, covered in soft gray fur that bristled with anxiety, their large ears pressed flat against their skulls. "Hello," Mira said softly, crouching to make herself smaller. "I'm Mira." They scattered like leaves in a storm, all except one. The smallest cub, Skit, according to his file, remained frozen beneath a table, his entire body trembling. He was too afraid to run, too afraid to stay, paralyzed by the contradiction of his own terror. Mira didn't approach. She simply sat on the floor, cross-legged, and waited. Hours passed. The other cubs peeked from their hiding spots, chittering nervously. Skit's trembling gradually subsided, though his eyes never left her. "You know," Mira said conversationally, addressing the room, "where I come from, being afraid isn't weakness. It's intelligence. Fear keeps you alive." Skit's ears twitched forward, just slightly. "But there's a difference," she continued, "between listening to fear and letting it control you." The next day, she brought food. Not the nutrient paste dispensed by the automated systems, but something she'd cooked herself, a simple stew, with vegetables she'd smuggled from the human quarters greenhouse. She set bowls around the room and retreated to her corner. The cubs didn't emerge, but she heard them whispering in their native tongue, a language of clicks and soft chirps. On the third day, Skit crept forward. He moved in fits and starts, freezing every few centimeters, as if expecting punishment. When he reached the bowl, he looked up at Mira with eyes that held more questions than any creature so small should carry. "It's okay," she said. "It's for you." He ate with desperate hunger, and when he finished, he didn't retreat. Instead, he positioned himself exactly halfway between her and his hiding spot, close enough to run, close enough to stay. Progress came in millimeters. Within a week, Skit allowed her to sit near him. Within 2, he'd rest his small head against her knee while she read aloud from human storybooks, translating as best she could. The other cubs watched from the shadows, their curiosity slowly overcoming their conditioning. The breakthrough came during a station malfunction. The lights failed without warning, plunging the nursery into absolute darkness. The cubs' screams were immediate and primal, 11 voices howling in pure terror. Mira heard them scrambling, colliding with furniture, their panic feeding on itself. And then she felt Skit press against her legs, shaking so hard she thought he might fall apart. "Hey," she whispered, her voice cutting through the chaos. She activated her wrist light, a small beacon in the darkness. One by one, the other cubs emerged, drawn to the only steady thing in their collapsing world. They huddled around her, 11 terrified children, and one human who'd somehow become their anchor. "Listen to me," Mira said, her voice calm and certain. "This is just darkness. Darkness can't hurt you. I'm here, and I won't let anything happen to you. Do you understand?" Skit pressed harder against her, then impossibly stepped forward into the circle of light. His voice was barely a whisper, but every cub heard it. "Big Sister is here. Big Sister will protect us." It became their mantra. "Big Sister is here." When the medical drones came for mandatory examinations, the cubs scattered, but Skit stood his ground, trembling but defiant. Big Sister says fear is okay. But running isn't always necessary. When a visiting diplomat's booming laugh sent them diving for cover, they looked to Mira first, taking their cues from her relaxed posture before hesitantly emerging. Weeks became months. The unsalvageable cubs learned to navigate the station's corridors, to interact with other species, to distinguish between genuine threats and simple unfamiliarity. They were still anxious, still prone to startling, but they functioned, they lived. The Velkin elders came to observe, their aged faces unreadable. They watched Mira lead the cubs through a crowded marketplace, watched Skit translate her reassurances to his siblings, watched 12 formerly hopeless children experience something their species had nearly forgotten, courage borrowed from trust. "How did you do this?" the eldest asked. Mira looked down at Skit, who'd positioned himself at her side, his small body pressed against her leg in that familiar protective stance. "I didn't fix their fear," she said. "I gave them something stronger to hold on to." The elder's expression flickered with something that might have been hope. "And what was that?" Skit answered before Mira could, his voice steady in a way it had never been before. "Each other." And Big Sister. That night, alone in her quarters, Mira reviewed the progress reports. The cubs were being relocated to permanent families, integrated into Velkin society with support structures in place. They'd be okay, but Skit had refused reassignment. When the social workers tried to separate him, he'd bitten one, barricaded himself in the nursery, and declared in broken standard that he would perish for Big Sister before leaving her. The other cubs had joined him, 11 small bodies forming a living shield around Mira's door. The Velkin elders called it concerning. The human psychologists called it codependency. The station administrator called it a diplomatic incident. Mira called it family. She'd signed up for a 1-year cultural exchange. She filed the paperwork for permanent residency that evening, with 12 character references attached, each written in the careful, shaky script of cubs learning to be brave, because the Velkin were dying from fear. Yes, but humans had always understood one fundamental truth. Sometimes survival isn't about being fearless. Sometimes it's about finding someone worth being afraid for, someone worth fighting beside, someone who makes you believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe isn't quite as dark as it seems. And in the end, that's what family means, even when it's built from fear, hope, and one human who couldn't walk away from 12 pairs of luminous eyes that finally believed they deserved to be safe.